We're going to need coffee for this one, y'all. You've signed the contract. The project is ready to begin, but wait, you're lost. There's all this jargon, and they're asking you for things like timelines and documents and who is in what role and what's going to happen and what you need and where it's at and how to get to it and all the things, and the brain melt is real. Let me bring out my Southern mama for y'all. It's going to be okay. You'll be fine. And I'm going to walk you through the expectations of you as a product owner, project manager on the business end of a consulting project. So let's get through this in a way that is not going to melt the brain, because brain overload is a completely real thing in the world of business. Our basics are planning, initiation, build and process phase. These are the main phases we're going to go through at a project. So under basics are the planning phase. These are the roles, the responsibilities, who's doing what. You are the project manager on the business side. There's also a project manager on the consultant side. You both have the same title, but vastly different roles to play. You, as the project manager, your job is to gather information from your company, put this into an easy to digest form that will be handed off to the consulting project manager. This can happen in meetings, emails, Google Docs, Lucid charts. There are just so many tools. And that depends on what tools your company already uses versus what tools the consulting agency use. And if you guys use the same tools, it's a blessing. The consulting project manager takes that information and then plots out the next steps of action, which will then flow into the project timeline. This is the very beginning step. That initial timeline, y'all, this will change. It's almost a guarantee. Your initial timeline is not set in stone. It's just not. It's anybody who's ever worked on a project knows this. So if you're brand new to working on projects like these, know the timeline's most definitely going to change. The initial timeline is your dream timeline. This is everything goes extremely well. It's perfect. It's beautiful. And it's basically a random date pulled out of thin air. This date, it will be glorious. And then you get to the actual timeline. The actual timeline is the truth. This is the timeline that the consulting project manager has set based on the information that you have given them. This is more realistic time based on the discovery sessions that have been had, the resources that are in your contract, what all has been involved in your contract. The consulting project manager is going to take all that into account based on the information you have given them and that initial timeline. This may push your dream date out a little bit. My suggestion would be to go with the consulting agency's timeline, because they're basing this off of the actual people they have to work on your project. And in my experience, I have worked on projects that have like these insane timelines. You don't really want your consultants to be super, super stressed out and freaking out that they're not going to hit a deadline and working 24 hours, because you want their brains at peak performance to give you the best outcome. So just keep that in mind. All right. This leads us into the phases of the actual project, which one is initiation. Of course, again, I'm going to say discovery sessions. There's going to be discovery sessions throughout your project. So you'll have your initial discovery sessions where they're getting the basics of what you need and diving more in depth into some of the more details of the bigger aspects of the project. Throughout the project, there are going to be what are basically known as mini discovery sessions. These are based off of things that are in the timeline that we know we need more detail on before we can tell you exactly how it's going to go. So you've had your big discovery sessions. Now you're going to have like little mini sessions throughout your entire project just to get more details, things like that. One of your big roles as the project manager on the side of the client, not the consultant, is to talk to your internal people and see the steps that they take and get information from them that you can then give over to the consulting project manager, solutions architect, technical architect, so that they can help instruct what is going to go into something called a user story, which we'll get into in a little while. This is also going to have an effect on your timeline and can push that timeline. That's why timelines are always malleable. They are our best guess at to when we can get things done. And if you have an IT project, there are things that may seem super simple when you talk it out, but once you actually go to build it are like just absolutely insane. So from this point, those user stories are going to be developed. These are tasks that come out of the discovery sessions and they delve into each issue that you have presented as well as a solution. This is a much broader topic, like I said, and for more detail, it's going to be gone into in another video where we're just going to detail out a user story completely and maybe even go through creating one just off the top of our heads. This is a very basic talk about user stories. They're a thing. However, user stories are very important because, again, they lead back to the timeline. Once your user stories are created and you have something called an LOE, which is a level of effort, how long each story is going to be taken, how long each story takes to actually complete, that's going to update your timeline, which may push out the end date of your timeline. This would be called your true timeline. And it's based on that information that you've given the consultants. They've created the user stories, then plotted the stories on a timeline. And this timeline is based on their best knowledge. And I'm telling you right now that normally we add 20% to the level of effort because we know we're going to hit blocks. Nothing's perfect. And if we come in under fabulous, we can move another user story up. It's great. But allow that to be there because that is for not only their protection, but for yours. As a consultant, we do not want you to have to go to your boss and be like, oh, well, it's going to take longer than we originally thought because this happened or that happened. And we don't want you to have those uncomfortable conversations. We want you to be able to give your boss the information they need, say, this is the timeline, this is the level of effort, this is why it's going to take that long, and be confident in what you're telling your boss. Now, if that timeline does have to move because there are going to be meetings scheduled, there's going to be touch bases, there's going to be statuses, and getting everybody on a call who needs to be on a call can be tedious at best. Also, in these calls, I would suggest not having like a ton of people. There are calls where you need specific people, and the consulting project manager will let you know. They'll be like, hey, we need this IT person. We need somebody who can tell us yes or no. We need somebody who can tell us the exact steps. And these are the people who need to be on the call. Erroneous random people that have nothing to do with your project don't need to be there. Most calls are recorded, and if they want to know what's going on, you can send them the recording and they can watch in their own time. Having too many people on the call tends to blow it out of the water, and you're wasting time and money. Each person from the consulting firm on that call, you are being charged their time. I suggest using it wisely. Look at this face. Use it wisely. All right. So then you get to the build phase, the process phase, and this really depends on what type of project you have. During this phase, user stories, like I said, super, super important. Once you have your user stories, they come back to you for approval. That's your step. You read over them, you confirm what they say, you confirm that everything is in it that you need, which again, we'll go over in another video because there's a lot to those. You give the approval to say yay or nay or make changes at that point. Then it comes to the build phase. Once that approval is set, it goes to development, and that's when it starts being built. Then it goes into the QA phase, and this is from the consulting side. They have their own QA, which is quality assurance, and they're going to test whatever was developed. They're going to read documentation, they're going to hit all the buttons, they're going to test all the things. And QAs are normally really, really good at their job. They're extremely detail oriented. However, they may not be able to hit everything like your end user would, or think of everything your end user would. So the next step would be UAT, and that is user acceptance testing. This is when that item that came from that user story goes back to you and you are smoke testing it. You are trying to break it. This is the fun part on your side. And you get to try to break what was built for you. and you try to get to do all the stupid things in the world, just anything to try to break it because you need to be able to find any of the bugs. If there is a bug, that story then goes back to build. That is fixed. It goes back to QA and back to you until it works as expected. Now, a lot of people think at this point they can add criteria to a user story. I do not suggest this. Let it be built out as it was expected in the first user story. You can always iterate on that in a new user story down the line, but especially for an implementation, you're looking for minimum viable product. What can you get out that is functional, feasible, usable, and helpful? And then you iterate on that as you go. If you keep changing a user story, it gets really confusing for the people trying to work on that story and they're trying to follow along. And it tends to go badly. Always allow a user story to go from beginning to end and then iterate on it later. All right, so it does not end at, hey, the user story works, it's passed, it's yay. You then have to train your people on that user story. Does it give new functionality? Is it going to change the way they do their jobs? Is it going to change the documentation they have to refer to? Your users need to understand what's happening so that something doesn't get published that's like, what now? I don't know what happened. Where's my thing that I was doing over here? And there's this thing over here, and I don't know what I'm doing. So you need to plan on training your users and letting them know what's coming out when. Next is your production release. That is when this piece of work, this item, is being released either into a production environment, which is your CRM, something like that, or a final product is being presented, say business process documentation. That would be your release. You have your final product, and that would be the end of that little section. And this reiterates for every single user story. So during this project, you're going to have a lot of meetings. It's going to take a lot of time. Ensure that when you're hiring a consultant, you have the time to manage the project on your end and that you bring in people who can help you do that. If you've been following this series in order up to this point, then you know I was feeling like a hot mess when my first project started and that it went horribly wrong. Like horribly, horribly wrong. What I would have been given to just be told or taught what actual project management was, even to just have that basic understanding of this, would have saved me so much time, heartache, stress, freaking out. Oh my God, the anxiety was real. Because I did not understand the nuances of project management, I was under the impression that things were just magic, that the consultant would do the thing by clicking a button and my world would be great. Well, I didn't realize they actually have to build the button first, and building the button takes understanding, solutioning, building, and testing. Had I known what we were about to go through, I would have been more prepared. And I could have effectively talked with my bosses and I could have effectively talked with my coworkers to understand exactly what we were needing and what they were wanting. Having an understanding of your coworkers' needs, your boss's needs, your company's needs is paramount. If you don't understand it, keep asking questions until you do. Because if you don't understand it, your consultant's not going to understand it and they're going to build what you give them, which could possibly be wrong if you don't have the correct understanding. Your role as a project manager on the client side is to ask the questions, get the information, and hand that over to your consultant. And I so wish this was taught to me at the beginning of my career. How I wish I had known this information. But alas, I did not. However, what I did know was how to document. So if you have an issue with figuring out how to document and streamline your internal business processes that will help increase efficiency and effectiveness, wait for next time because that's what we're talking about, y'all. Bye.